I commend the Honourable Member for Bath for bringing forward this bill, and I rise to support the amended bill as is. No one should have to suffer harassment in the workplace, but sadly the reality is that it still affects about 1.5 million people per year. It does occur, and we need to encourage employers to take it seriously and take all the necessary steps to A, prevent it, and B, take action and provide the necessary support where it does occur. This particular bill, and I applaud the amendment, asks that reasonable steps are taken, because as my honourable friend from Devise actually mentioned about the language is banter generally regarding harassment. That is an area of concern, and I look forward to seeing how we as a government are going to make sure we have the correct balance between ensuring safety of individuals that can go about their daily lives as normal, without preventing what I would hope would be a little bit of joviality in the workplace. But it is a balancing act, and one that any responsible employer should always make sure they're reassessing and feedbacking and having a feedback loop to ensure that the team atmosphere is appropriate and no one individual is feeling harassed or picked on. Women in the workplace remains a significant issue. Now, when I was researching for previous speeches, I took the opportunity to speak to various friends and family, and each and every one of my female friends and family had been harassed at some point in their life. Now, I regard that as a cultural issue, but I wanted to stress that most of the people I know, and I would argue probably all the people I know, not those that are the harassers. It is a very small minority of our community that have the biggest negative impact, and these are the people that we need to call out. This particular piece of legislation will be part of the arsenal that we as a government are putting together to ensure that people do feel safe in all walks of life. A BBC survey back in November 2017 found that 40% of women and 18% of men had experienced unwanted sexual behaviour in the workplace. And this was reported in the Women and Equality's 2018 inquiry. Between 5 and 18% of those said that the initiator was a client or customer. And that's a pretty significant proportion, and hence why I rise to support this bill, because it's not always those in the immediate workplace. It could be people walking through the door and being totally inappropriate, and this particular piece of legislation will allow that to now be addressed and allow the employer to be consciously making a decision about how can they make sure that it doesn't happen again in the future. This piece of legislation, I think, is important, but I'm conscious that the honourable friend from Devise was spot on, that actually the narrative can be very quickly extrapolated outwards if we're not keeping a watch on the unintended consequences, especially in terms of definitions. While I remain supportive of the body that will be doing the rules and regulations on this, it won't take much for one or two people within those organisations to have a significant impact on how this is actually interpreted in the workplace. So while we here in this place create legislation, the reality is the most important bit is actually how it actually physically impacts people's lives. During the pandemic, we saw, actually I got approached by a bunch of workers in Tesco's in one of my communities, and they had a horrible time during the pandemic. It was one or two of the clientele coming in and being really, really disruptive, and it was they had frequent mistreatments and abuse. This piece of legislation will now ensure that the Tesco of the world, and obviously there are other food retailers, will actually proactively find solutions that hopefully will make sure that people have a better quality of life as and when they go to work. And finally, it's crucial for all of us to have and enforce a safe working environment. I can only imagine what it must feel like to spend the majority of your week feeling unsafe due to harassment by another. Government figures suggest that 41% of those harassed say their perpetrators face no consequences. That is simply not good enough. The perception that there will be a lack of action after reporting is a huge part of why we see such low levels of reports. We must make people, especially women, feel like we are with them and that we are on their side no matter who the perpetrator is. This bill is another small part in doing that. Thank you.